If you're happy with the same old ways of dating,
If you enjoy sucking at communication,
and you have no desire to improve your romantic life, then our podcast might not be for you.
but if you want some out-of-the-box ideas to deepen your current relationships,
broaden your sexual horizons,
develop a better understanding of yourself,
or learn more about non-monogamy,
Then you've come to the right place. I'm Jase,
I'm Emily.
and I'm Dedeker.
and this is the Multiamory podcast.
Songs I know I did, forcing me to form myself to fit.
On this episode of the Multiamory podcast, we're talking about attachment styles. What are they? How can they affect your relationships? And we're also going to talk about ways to remedy possible attachment styles and how to do that within the multiple relationships in your life. So I am Emily,
I'm Dedeker,
and we're coming at you from
Bulgaria without Jase.
Yeah.
Oh, that's sad.
Whatever, Jase. I know, it is sad, actually. I miss
Just
him.
in case you guys haven't noticed, Jase has not had a week off of this podcast since its creation.
So that's 80 different podcasts.
Yeah, he's been on like every single podcast every single week since our inception.
Yeah, and the two of us have had a lot of weeks off.
We've had many
between
weeks
the
off.
two of us, yeah.
So we decided to give him a little bit of a break. I mean, he's still going to put in all his work and effort that he normally does of editing it and producing it and getting it all nice and shiny for you guys. But in the meantime, you're stuck with just the two of us ladies.
Yeah, it's a ladies' day.
It's the ladies' day.
Yeah.
Anyway, so how do we start talking about attachment in the first place?
Well, you were the one who kind of brought it to me and were like, oh, this is an interesting thing. Have you heard about attachment styles?
Yeah, I mean, and I'm relatively new to this as well. So attachment styles at first became a thing actually with studies that were done in the late 50s, early 60s, where they studied attachment styles in children.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it was studying like, you know, if you have a baby or a toddler and like mom leaves the room and then comes back, like how does the child react?
Yeah.
You know, is the child like happy that mom comes back? Is the child upset and like tries to avoid mom? Or does the child freak out as soon as mom steps out of the room?
Yeah.
That they were trying to look at like how is it that children attach kind of to their primary caregiver.
So are they saying that attachment styles, it's not like a nurture versus nature thing? Or is a baby just like born with that and that's it?
I don't know. It seems from
Or-
what I've been reading that it is based on like how the parents do treat the child.
Sure,
That, like,
so that's more of a nurture.
yeah, that like if the parents are very attentive to a baby's needs and like anytime the baby has a need, the parent is there on top of it.
Sure.
That the child will grow up with a more secure attachment style.
Yeah.
Because they know like, okay, like if I need anything, like mom or dad's there and that's
Yeah,
good.
or my partner or whomever in later years.
Yeah, so that's the thing
Yeah.
is that like these are things that are developed in your early childhood, but then they tend to kind of evolve and translate also when you become an adult.
Yeah.
And they didn't start studying attachment theory in adults, I think, until like the 80s or so.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's a relatively recent thing.
Yeah, because honestly, I'd never heard of it before you brought it to me, but then I realized, yeah, this is definitely a thing, and we're going to go more into it for sure.
Yeah, and so the interesting thing with attachment theory is that it's not necessarily talking about like the way that you attach in your relationships like just all the time. Specifically, it's looking at this particular facet of how you respond within your relationships when you're hurt, when you're separated, or when you're perceiving a threat to that relationship.
So
kind of-
something like kind of has to happen in order for this
Yeah.
attachment theory
yeah,
to
like
come
when
out.
things are under pressure,
Yeah.
how do you react?
Interesting.
And of course, you know, and these are looking at different relationships, not just romantic relationships, but your relationship with your dad or with your mom or with your friends in particular. And so why is this important to know about if you're in a poly relationship?
Sure. I mean, it's good to know because when you're engaging in multiple relationships, it kind of can show you like how you handle jealousy or anything in a particular situation, any conflict that might arise. And also, you can definitely have a different attachment style with each different relationship that you're in. Maybe you're super secure in one, but then the other one, for whatever reason, you have a fear of abandonment or something within that relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting because of the fact that, like, if you're going to be in a polyamorous or a non-monogamous relationship, that requires that you're separated from your loved one at some point.
Like what you're going through currently?
Yeah, like it requires like that, you know, you're going to go out on a date with someone else.
Sure.
Or your partner's going to go out on a date with someone else.
Yes.
Or spend the night with someone else. Or like have just a whole other separate relationship with someone else. And so it requires that kind of pressure of, hey, there's separation.
On a consistent basis.
Yeah, and so it's, well, how do you react to that separation?
Absolutely. That's probably a very different thing in a monogamous relationship. I mean, it can still come up, but it's probably very specific to that relationship.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's it. Yeah.
So, let's see, is there anything else here? Yeah, we mentioned the fact that it is like possible to hold different attachment styles for your mom or your dad or your friends, but also within multiple partners.
Yes.
You can feel particularly secure in one and more anxious in the other.
Exactly.
So in adults, they've categorized 4 broad attachment styles.
Yeah.
And essentially, basically, to look at it even broader, it's kind of like one of them is secure and then the other 3 are like
insecure,
like attachment issues.
Insecure within a kind of different facets of that insecurity.
So secure attachment is pretty straightforward.
Your securely attached adults tend to have a positive view of themselves and their partners and their relationships. They end up feeling comfortable with intimacy and independence, and they balance the two very well and equally.
Yeah, so I don't know, it's hard for me to talk about the secure attachment style because it's like, well, this person is just perfect. Like,
I know, and it's like, I guess there definitely are people out there who are very secure within their relationship. Like, even if I think back to a good mother-father figure that I knew, my best friend growing up, he has a very, like, wonderful, loving mother and father, and I feel like the two of them must be very secure within their partnership just because of time and because of what they've shown each other with their emotional intimacy.
I guess, I mean, when I think about that, Emily and I both took a quiz specifically trying to figure out what your attachment style is, which we'll talk about that later. But, you know, my relationship with my mom specifically is very secure attachment.
Mine as well, yeah.
You know, and not to say that that's like a perfect relationship, but as in like there's no fears that she's not going to be there for me. There's no fears that she's not going to have emotional support. There's no fears that I can't depend on this person. There's no fears of abandonment. So it's a very secure relationship. That's not how everybody feels about their mom.
No, I mean, I definitely know people who are like, they never go to their mother for advice. They end up like being more of the person who gives advice to their mother. And then also there are people out there, like even Josh, my boyfriend, like doesn't talk to his family that often. So he may like definitely be very close with his family, but he only talks to them like once a month or his mother once a month. So that may be still secure, but it's not like you and me who tend to like go to our moms for a lot of stuff.
For more than that, for sure. So that's the secure one. And it's funny because they were talking about how like babies and toddlers will grow up more secure, like if their parents are more like attentive to their needs. And so I was questioning that. I was thinking like, well, what parent is like not attentive to their needs? Like, I mean, provided they're not like a neglectful, like horrible parent, you know? But they pointed out the fact that like if the baby perceives that like I asked for something or like I cried, you know, like I demonstrated that I had a need, and there was resistance to that from my parents, like either they told me no or they ignored it, that or even if they unintentionally ignored it, you know, like if the baby's just crying for like a minute too long or 30 seconds too long while mom's trying to take care of something, but the baby interprets that as like, oh, my needs aren't getting met, that even that is enough to like not to kind of limit how much the child is going to grow up with a secure attachment to their parents.
That's like very Freudian to me.
I mean, it is very Freudian, and it seems very fragile.
Well, and also that's interesting because like when does conscious perception start within a child? Like when does someone say, or when does a kid like start realizing and understanding like, okay, I'm not getting my needs met right now? And how does that translate to later in life? Like is a kid cognitively developed enough as a baby in order to like make these things
I don't know,
last in their life?
I mean, if there's any listeners who are child psychologists,
like let us know.
Please let us know, because I know that when you're first born, like you're just like a little grub, of just like needs,
little spawn,
and then but until you're about the age of like 1 or 2, you still think that you're like the same entity as your parents. Like you don't understand that like you have separate thoughts from your parents. But you can still get those impressions of like mom's meeting my needs or mom's not meeting my needs.
Yeah, I guess you can. But then you start having like memories and thoughts like, at a specific age.
Yeah, but then like around 2 or 3, that's when you start to realize like, oh, I am separate from my parents. Like that's the first time you're able to like lie, for instance, when you realize like, oh, what's going on in my brain is something that's separate from like, what mom and dad can
and
hear.
Test your boundaries and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's
anyway,
interesting.
That was a child psychology tangent.
Sorry, yeah. If anyone has more to say on that, let us know.
Yeah, please educate us, because we don't know nothing about babies.
Exactly. No, not yet.
So the next style is anxious preoccupied, and this can be summed up, somebody summed this up with a phrase, and the phrase being like, I want to be emotionally intimate with people, but they don't want to be with me, or I'm afraid that they don't want to be with me.
Sure.
Yeah, and so like anxious preoccupied adults will definitely, sometimes they're labeled as very needy. They will seek a lot of intimacy, they'll seek approval, they'll seek responsiveness or communication from partners, and sometimes they may even become like too dependent on their partners or codependent.
Yeah, so these are the people who also tend to be a little bit less trusting. They have less positive views about themselves and their partners, and they may exhibit high levels of emotional expressiveness, so kind of the spewers, potentially. And then worry and be impulsive in their relationships. And they also have, that fear of a partner leaving them.
Yeah, so that's an interesting thing, is because like on other episodes when we've talked about jealousy, for instance, we've talked about the fact that jealousy is so frequently based in this fear of like losing somebody, a fear of losing a partner. So, I think I would theorize that the people who experience the highest levels of jealousy are more likely to be anxious preoccupied.
Interesting.
I think there's more likely to be this sense of like, my partner's going to leave me. Or just, like I'm going to lose this person that I have. And so they're kind of more, that's why it's called preoccupied, is because they're preoccupied with this sense of like, maybe my partner secretly doesn't want to be with me. And like, as soon as they get an opportunity to find someone better, then they're going to take off. And I mean, I've definitely experienced this in a lot of times in my life, and again, it is partner to partner, because I've had partners where I'm like, I'm so secure with you, I know that there's no way that we're gonna leave each other for whatever reason, so that's not a thing that I'm worried about. But then I've had partners where I'm like, fuck, like this person could definitely leave me, and I'm anxious about it all the time. I'm curious to know, because I do feel like just because you experience jealousy, it doesn't mean that like you are anxious preoccupied in your attachment style. I think honestly, with all of these attachment styles, it is possible to feel jealousy. It's just kind of a matter of how you react to it, right?
And if you let it run your life and in your relationship life.
Or maybe how frequently it comes up.
And maybe also how much it, how good or not good you are at kind of taking that and then using it to your advantage, or like helping it along, or being better at it.
So I would theorize like people who have a more secure attachment style, like maybe you'll still experience jealousy, but maybe it might be just less often that it comes up. Or maybe you do experience jealousy, it's just that you have a better handle of like of letting it pass quicker, like it passes quicker for you because you're able to be like, well, but it's okay, like I feel secure, and things are okay. So I don't think that like, just because you have a secure attachment style means that you're going to be immune to like ever feeling threatened or ever feeling jealous.
No, but if you do, it's if you let it run kind of your life and not think about it, and not be more, I don't know, preoccupied with yourself and figuring it out. Why am I doing these things?
I was definitely more anxious preoccupied when I was younger, I think.
I guess that makes sense. I don't know. It's interesting because I feel like in my first relationship, I learned about jealousy and became more jealous because my partner really was. He would always be like, where are you going? I saw your car here. Why was it there?
That's a big thing, actually, that I was reading about the anxious preoccupied attachment style. It's like separation is a big issue.
Separation.
Like physical separation.
Interesting.
Tends to be more of an issue, where it's like, if my partner's gone, like I'm very anxious about...
Because I don't know where they are.
I don't know where they are. I don't know if they're going to meet someone more awesome than me. That's definitely a big issue.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, is it time to take a break?
I think so.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break from talking about this super uplifting topic of anxious attachment.
I know, oh God.
To talk about ways that you guys can help support our show. First of all, I just have to say, like, our big audience of listeners are just amazing people.
Seriously, you guys, you're amazing.
The fans that reach out to us, the people who reach out to us on Twitter or on Facebook or send us emails, like, it so helps keep us going just to know that, like, your thoughts on the show, your positive feedback, also your negative feedback as well helps us. And also knowing that the information that we provide helps you guys really, really helps keep us going.
Yeah.
So if you're enjoying the show and you want to help support us, the best way to do that is to go to Patreon.
Yes.
So you're going to go to patreon.com/multiamory and become one of our patrons. So as thanks for becoming one of our patrons, we have all kinds of different rewards, everything from getting invited to our private Facebook group where we have kind of personal discussions where we talk about topics that people want to see on, see us cover on an episode.
Yes.
Or share like silly stories or
or behind the scenes videos or behind the scenes pictures.
Or sometimes people reach out to us with questions like, hey, this is going on in my relationship. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
So just getting connected to that community. We also, once a month, we have online video discussion groups where you can join us and we talk about particular topics, which have been fantastic.
Yeah.
So if you want to support us, go to patreon.com. That's patreon.com/multiamory. What else can they do, Em?
You can write us a review either on iTunes or Stitcher or what are the other places?
TuneIn, Google Play,
Jeez.
all these different
We're on
iHeartRadio.
Yeah. Oh, we're on iHeartRadio
We
now?
are. I think we're on iHeartRadio. I don't know. Wherever you listen to us.
Yeah, you can write a review and that makes us show up higher when you search for us or when people search for Polyamory podcast or anything, it makes us show up higher. Plus, it makes Jase cry. It makes people...
Jase cry, yeah.
Exactly. It just makes us feel really great. And again, just to know that we're helping out people... Again, makes us want to continue doing this each day. So,
and best of all, it's free.
Yes,
and
that is a free
maybe
thing.
less than 5 minutes of your time.
Exactly.
Okay, and so then another way that you guys can help us out is by going to audibletrial.com/multiamory. If you go there, you can get a free 30-day trial of Audible, which includes the download of one audiobook. If you guys don't know already, Audible is this huge, massive library of audiobooks. Everything fiction, nonfiction. You can listen to entire college courses, like series of lectures. You can listen to textbooks. You can listen to people giving talks. I'm listening to Eckhart Tolle give a retreat, actually.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, that's on Audible. That was
Sweet.
like really freaking amazing.
Wow.
So if you go to audibletrial.com/multiamory, you can get that free trial and also it'll help support our show.
So thank you guys.
Thank you guys so much. Okay, back to it. What's the next attachment style?
So dismissive avoidance, in a way that they described this was, I'd rather not depend on others or have others depend on me. And then these dismissive avoidant adults, they desire a high level of independence. They often appear to avoid attachment altogether. They view themselves as highly self-sufficient, self-sufficient, and they're invulnerable to attachment feelings, and they don't really need close relationships in their life.
So this is the dismissive avoidant. I'd actually say there was a good 3 or 4 years in my life where this was totally me.
Yeah, I remember you saying something about that,
where
for
it was
sure.
totally like, I just kept everyone at arm's length. Like, I didn't want anyone to get close. I didn't want to get close to anybody else. I just, like, did not want anybody getting close to me.
Interesting.
And the funny thing is that, like, whenever people talk about another person having a fear of intimacy,
Sure.
it tends to be something like this, of being dismissive avoidant.
Yeah.
And some people actually look at polyamory or look at multi-partner relationships and label it as that. They say, like, well, you're just avoiding intimacy.
Sure. Or you haven't found the one yet.
Yeah, well, I mean,
it's
these
not
are usually
important.
people who, like, don't realize that this is actually, like, meaningful or, like, deep relationships.
Yeah.
If they see someone who has multiple partners, they assume, well, they all must be, like, surface-level relationships.
Yes,
this must be,
or
like...
just sex or something.
Yeah, this must be, like, avoiding commitment or avoiding intimacy or avoiding love. And so there's definitely have been theories that polyamorous people tend to be more avoidant.
Yeah.
But we'll actually address that a little bit later.
Yeah, that's definitely
Have you
not the
ever
case.
been with someone like that or ever experienced
That's a good
this kind
question.
of attachment?
I think it's so because I do appreciate and really like to be around people who are like highly emotional often, I tend to not have people in my life who are that dismissive. Yeah, I think that I probably wouldn't deal with that very well.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess I have like had partners who ultimately are just like, sorry, I'm not interested in this because I don't want something as deep as what you're asking me for. That happened more in college. I think younger people in college, they are sort of...
It's like, I don't want a relationship right now.
Yeah, and they're figuring out their independence
Yeah.
and stuff and they don't want like a deep, really emotional thing.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
and it's like... I don't know, the players of, yeah, when you're
no, that makes
in your young
sense.
20s. Or,
that makes sense.
Yeah. Have you been with people who were like this?
I'm trying to think. I mean, because usually, like, if I'm ever in a relationship where this has come up, like, I've been the one who's brought up, like, the avoidant, like, aspect to it.
And what do you think the reasoning behind that was? Was it because you were trying to, like, save yourself from that emotional attachment, or
don't know. Honestly,
valued your independence?
This is kind of a good lead into the next one.
Sure.
Because where I think that I've tended to live most of my life is the next attachment style, which is fearful avoidant.
Yeah.
And the fearful avoidant, the phrase for them is, I want to be close, but what if I get hurt? And so I feel like for most of my adult relationships, it's been a mix of, like, either fearful avoidant or dismissive avoidant.
Interesting.
So, like, the fearful avoidant person, they have mixed feelings about close relationships because they both, like, really want to be emotionally close, but they also feel uncomfortable with that closeness.
Interesting.
They have a tendency to mistrust their partners and also to view themselves as unworthy. And now, when I read that, that totally resonated.
Really?
With me. Yeah. Like, because I feel like in my past, in relationships where I've been not as, like, attracted or not as drawn to the other person, it's been more dismissive avoidant.
Okay.
But in relationships where I've been very drawn to that person or very attracted to them, it's been more fearful avoidant.
Interesting.
In the sense of feeling
like,
unworthy.
am I not worthy? Yeah.
Yes, a feeling like I really like this person, but I feel like I'm not worthy of them, and so I'm going to kind of pull back a little bit because I don't want to get hurt.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
It's real messed up, but...
Well, I mean, it's understandable.
Yeah.
It's just a different way of doing something, like, different than how I go. I usually, like, jump in all the way and then do get hurt or have gotten hurt.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it's understandable that you would want to not be hurt by someone.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Like, that's been more where I've kind of lived.
Where do you think the turning point happened? Because I wouldn't characterize that as
there was a very
now.
Specific turning point that happened like 3-ish years ago.
Yeah.
And it was a combination of factors. One of those factors was actually watching Brene Brown's TED Talk on vulnerability.
Oh, that's cool.
Have you watched it?
No.
Oh, it's freaking amazing. Like,
wow.
That helped turn me around. And then, I don't know, like, I just came to this realization that, like, the only, like, because I realized, like, that I do want to be close.
Yeah,
like, that was the
course.
big thing. It was like, oh, I actually do seek, like, emotional relationships. I do seek emotional fulfillment. Like, I do want this. But I had to realize that, like, I'm not going to get that if I'm constantly pulling back.
Yes.
I'm not going to get that if I'm constantly trying to close myself. Like, I have to open myself up.
Yeah, and be vulnerable to
exactly,
that.
if I'm going to get what I want.
Yeah.
Like, that was a major turning point. And it's not that everything became perfect after that point.
Sure.
But that definitely was, I think, the beginning of me being able to actually get close to, like, secure attachment in relationships.
Okay.
Of being able to open myself up and, like, actually give of myself. And
That's
actually,
really cool.
like, express my feelings and be affectionate to people. Around that same time, like, my entire life, I wasn't a very cuddly or, like, touch-based person.
Yes.
And, like, at that same time, suddenly I was like, oh, it is okay to, like, touch people.
Yeah.
It is okay to, like, outwardly express my affection or my feelings for someone.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely, I mean, thank God there was that turning point.
For sure, yeah.
Because I think that that's been, like, necessary for me to have success, particularly in polyamorous relationships.
Of course. Yeah, that's fantastic. Because you have to be vulnerable to put yourself out there enough to be with multiple people. That's a very vulnerable situation in which to put oneself.
Yeah.
For sure.
So I want to go back. We mentioned the fact that, like, a lot of people kind of accuse polyamorists of just being avoidant.
Yes.
You know, like, you have multiple partners because you're too afraid of, like, getting close to one partner.
Yeah.
And so you're just avoidant attached. And I was really surprised that in 2014 there actually was a study done on this.
I know, that's super cool.
Like, there are so few studies done on, like, non-monogamy.
Yeah, and there were a lot of participants.
Yeah, so there were 2
Thousands
studies.
Yes, in fact, that's lovely.
Yeah. And so in the first study, it was done via a survey, I think, about attachment styles and things like that. And so in the first study, the results showed that people who approved of polyamory, and this was in the first study, it was all people who were monogamous, like heterosexual monogamous. But they found that the people who did approve of polyamory, they were more likely to have the avoidant attachment style, like we talked about.
Okay.
And they were less likely to be anxious attached.
Interesting. Yeah.
Which makes sense. However, in the second study,
And these were all heterosexual monogamous people who did this study.
Well, the majority of the second study were monogamous, but then a small percentage, or the minority, were in a non-monogamous relationship.
I see. Yeah, but the first study was all heterosexual monogamous people.
But so the second study found that the people who were in the non-monogamous relationship, they had actually lower levels of avoidance.
Okay.
They had higher levels of trust, and they had lower levels of jealousy.
That's cool.
And so it's actually kind of cool. There's a specific quote in the results of the study that they concluded that the findings of the study provide important new evidence that people can exhibit aspects of security without sexual exclusivity.
Interesting.
And that's something
cool.
that I come back to all the time of like asking people, well, what are the things that you do to create safety and create commitment and create dedication in your relationships outside of just sexual exclusivity?
Sure.
Because it's so much bigger than just that.
Absolutely.
You know, as anyone in a monogamous relationship can tell you, you know, just because you're the only person that they're fucking doesn't mean that like you feel great all the time or secure all
absolutely.
the time.
Yeah. And that's the question is like, what exactly makes a person secure in a relationship? Is it communication? Is it going to be like, I know that this person is always there for me emotionally, and I know that if I need something from them, they'll be there for me. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, there are people out there who are a bit flippant and who maybe don't want to be there for you, and I guess that can kind of breed more anxious attachment potentially.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, like, I do think that if you are interested in being polyamorous or if you are interested in being non-monogamous, it's probably going to go better for you. Well, obviously, it's going to go better for you if you're secure.
Yes.
That's like for any relationship.
Of course.
But it's probably going to be easier for someone who is more on the avoidant side rather than on the anxious side.
Sure, yeah.
As in like someone who tends to err more on the side of being too independent rather than someone who tends to err on the side of being too dependent.
Sure.
I think. I don't know. What do you think about
that? No, I
that?
get that. I agree with you. Yeah. I don't know. It's always good, in my opinion, to try to not have codependency in your relationships. That's, I think, something that everyone has to work on at one time or another. Because, the nature of relationships sometimes is like, well, you're fulfilling my needs. And so that's a codependent, like, idea in and of itself. And if you can be independent of that and just allow, like, yourself and your partner their autonomy, then you're able to not have to have that codependency in your life, hopefully.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So we
took
did this uncomfortable quiz
Yeah.
about attachment styles.
Yeah.
What were yours?
That's a good question. Why don't you go over yours first?
Let me see. So my results. So as I kind of predicted, my general attachment style tends to be the fearful avoidant. With my mom, tends to be secure.
Yes.
With my father, fearful avoidant, although that was a hard one because, like, I've had multiple father figures in my life, and so it was hard to, like, answer the questions appropriately.
Exactly.
And it said with romantic, preoccupied. And it's interesting because this quiz in particular, obviously it's built around you having one partner.
Yeah.
Because something that I think we've both experienced is that you can have different attachment styles in different romantic relationships.
Yeah.
You know, and also at different times in different romantic relationships.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
You could be feeling totally secure and then suddenly feel avoidant or very anxious and then go back to feeling secure. Or you could be feeling secure in one relationship and then totally anxious and preoccupied in another
one. Of course. Yeah. In mine, so my general avoid or attachment style is preoccupied, which I found really interesting. Yes, anxious preoccupied. And then again, yes, with my mother, very secure. With my father, who has been not really a figure at all in my life, it's been fearful avoidant. And then romantic was preoccupied, which is interesting. And again, like, this is with my main, I guess I would say, primary partner. And I was surprised by that because I thought that it would be anxious attachment or anxious preoccupied, but it was just more preoccupied is what they said. So, and then in my friendships, depending on who it is, I think I have some very secure friendships, and then others I have more preoccupied friendships, depending on that one. Yeah.
So I think, and like I said, we'll include a link to this quiz. Again, the quiz isn't perfect, but it can still be very illuminating to kind of figure out what space you live in.
Yeah, it's a long quiz, which I think is cool. It definitely goes into quite a few different aspects of your life.
And I think I guess the ultimate takeaway I would want our listeners to have from this is something that I've been saying like ad nauseum, is just that like self-awareness is like the most powerful tool you have in the box.
Absolutely.
When it comes to relationships.
Yes.
Like, if you know yourself, like if you're aware of the fact like, oh, you know, I was raised in a situation where I had this very anxious attachment, like to my father, for instance.
Yeah.
And then I've brought that to my relationships as well. That if you're aware of that, that's the first step for being able to get in front of it, rather than letting that just run the show.
Yes. Yeah.
And I mean, this is something like the fearful avoidant thing. I mean, I only like learned about this just a couple weeks ago, and I'm like, oh my god, that makes
you're
so
like,
much
that's so
sense
what I've done
for so many things. Like, I so wish I'd known that earlier, so that I can know, like, oh, this is why I do this.
Yes.
And so then I can actively make the choice to not do it.
Yeah. Again, it's a lot of going back and looking at yourself and trying to figure out like what are the reasons behind this? How can I change those? Just trying to get behind it and figure out what you can do to prevent it or to just make everything better. Yeah.
Because the thing is, like, with self-awareness, because like polyamory, I think when it's going well, it's actually quite easy. I find.
It can be.
I find, like, when everyone's on board and everyone's communicating, then it's quite easy.
Sure.
It's more about, like, how do you react when the pressure is on? Like, how do you react when something goes wrong? How do you react when something that you didn't expect crops up? Because that's when the wild card gets into the mix.
The change or...
Yeah, exactly. And so knowing just kind of where you operate can really help you to not be as thrown off by unexpected things or by uncomfortable things.
Yeah, that's great.
All right. Well, is that it?
I think so.
We made
I hope
it through
you
an
learned
episode
something.
without Jase.
I know.
Oh my god.
Well, I mean, again, sorry, Jase, you're gonna have to edit this.
Oh god, is it time for a spin-off show?
God!
Now that we've proven our independence.
There you go.
Are
exactly.
we gonna be avoidant attached to Jase?
Yeah, we're the feminist polyamory show or something. Yeah.
Okay, well, you guys, thank you so much for listening. I hope that this was helpful for you. Again, if there's a child psychologist out there who wants to educate us on,
on the
on child
beginnings
development
of
and
what we
attachment,
discussed,
please reach out to us. If you have any questions, any comments, any feedback for us, you can find us. You can email us at info@multiamory.com. You can tweet at us on Twitter @multiamory. You can find us at Facebook /multiamory. And also, last but not least, patreon.com/multiamory. Thank you so much, you guys.
Goodbye.
See you next
from
week.
Bulgaria.
Goodbye.
Hey, this is Dan Savage from the Savage Lovecast and Savage Love, and you're listening to a Swing Set podcast at Swing Set FM.